So I think I have like 1 million questions in just one that you've already said from this one. Now, I'm going to throw that question back to you,
okay.
Dr. Barrister Egwuatu. Is that law, is it practicable in Nigeria? One. Good. And then you said it is a legislation. Was that what you called it?
Yes, it's an act of the National Assembly. It's a law. Yes,
so
it's enforceable.
It's enforceable, yeah?
Exactly.
So it means that at that point, I can sue that doctor who refused to treat my neighbor.
You can.
Okay, so answer my question.
Okay, is the law practicable in Nigeria? Yes, it is. Now, one thing is practicability. Two is it solving the problem it's intended to solve? Now, why is the law practicable? The law does not enforce itself. This is a law that has been in existence since 2017. Now, a lot of people, I mentioned people not being aware of these rights, and that's part of why we are doing what we are doing.
Medical negligence is rife, is happening almost everywhere. But then again, the instances proving it, that's where they matter. Because really, in law, we say the court is not a Father Christmas. If you're saying this doctor killed this person, you have to still come to court to prove it. So now that proving
that's where you say he who alleges has to prove.
Prove. So if you're alleging that death resulted as a result of the action of medical health personnel, so and so, then you have to connect the action to the resulting damage. So that proof is where it can really get tricky, because it can be like, okay, it could be an associated cause, but that was not the primary cause. Probably the person had underlying issues. But then again, that does not take away from the fact that we will keep educating people that when you smell a fish, when it smells fishy, that might be a reason to probably dig a bit further.
All right, we begin this conversation taking our quote first from Anton Chekhov, who is an author, once said, "Medicine is my lawful wife and literature is my mistress. When I get fed up with one, I spend the night with the other." Oh, wow. All right, my next one is from Lord Byron, who once said, "Always laugh when you can. It is cheap medicine." I've heard a lot of people say the same thing. And also in the word of George Carlin, he once said, "Isn't it a bit unnerving that doctors call what they do practice?" Now let's see how this could relate to what we'll be discussing today. Very warm greetings and welcome to The Conversation. We're reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabel Orji. World Patient Safety Day 2023. That's what we'll be commemorating today. And the theme for this year's World Patient Safety Day is Engaging Patient for Patient Safety. Now, first, we'll start with Elevate the Voice of Patients. World Patient Safety Day 2023 is observed every 17th September, and the theme for this year's Patient Safety Day is Engaging Patients for Patient Safety, in recognition of the crucial role patients, families, and caregivers play in the safety of healthcare. Evidence shows that when patients are treated as partners in their care, significant gains are made in safety, patient satisfaction, and health outcomes. By becoming active members of the healthcare team, patients can also contribute to safety of their care and that of the healthcare system as a whole. Through the slogan Elevate the Voice of Patients, who calls on all stakeholders to take necessary action to ensure that patients are involved in policy formulation, they are represented in governance structures, and they are engaged in co-designing safety strategies and are also active partners in their own care. This can only be achieved by providing platforms and opportunities for diverse patients, families, and communities to raise their voices and their concerns, expectations, and also preferences to advance safety, patient-centeredness, trustworthiness, and equity. Now, the objective of the World Patient Safety Day 2023 is 1. Raise global awareness of the need for active engagement of patients and their families and caregivers in all settings and at all levels of healthcare to improve patient safety. 2. Engage policymakers, healthcare leaders, health and care workers, patient organizations, civil societies, and other stakeholders in efforts to engage patients and families in their policies and practices in terms of safe and healthcare. 3, empower patients and families to be actively involved in their own healthcare and improvements of safety and health care. And the last is to advocate. That's advocate for urgent action on patient and family engagement aligned with Global Patient Safety Action Plan 2021 to 2030 to be taken by all partners, now working together to make healthcare safer. So, today, we will join the rest of the world to commemorate World Patient Safety Day 2023. And wherever you are, if you're a patient visiting the hospital or they're coming to give you treatment, you need to watch this episode of the conversation. I've got a full house. Today, we'll be speaking with barristers, and then we'll also be speaking to victims of medical negligence. So that's why I said you don't want to miss this part of the show. My name is Annabel Orji. Welcome to the conversation.
Using a visual illustration, Professor Sonny Isimide, Director of Patient Safety Africa, noted that the existing culture in Africa must change in order to incorporate the process of risk reduction and to ensure patient safety.
What we're seeking is a culture change. The processes, the behaviors, the attitudes, the environment, in fact, the whole culture, the system of doing things must change to have the patient move from the edge of care to the very heart and the center of care. This is what it's about. And so the policy today that we are presenting is about, moving patient from a position where the patient is begging to be accepted to the point where the patient is actually the head of the healthcare system.
Professor Isimide, who applauded the support by the government and civil society groups, said a lot still needs to be done in elevating the voices of patients.
Knowledge is power, they say. At the moment, as you can see, that we struggle with the word patient safety, talking about patient safety to many people, and we have to use quality of care, because it's still not comfortable anytime you use patient safety. They think you're about to criticize them, So if we catch them young from the medical school, from the schools of nursing, begin to teach them using the World Health Organization, patient safety curriculum, the multi-professional version, which we're trying to set up at the Federal University of Health Sciences, Otukpo, that would be great, catching them young, so that by the time they graduate, 3-4 years later as doctors, they already have the basics of patient safety. At the moment, we're trying to teach people who have been confident in doing many things and unfortunately many things wrongly. And it's very difficult. You have to unlearn to learn in order to lead.
Meanwhile, a member of the Patient Safety Policy and Strategy Document Development for Nigeria, Steve Abbas, speaks on the policy document and its milestone achievement so far.
Is that we have gone through a series of processes, beginning with some gap analysis to identify the gaps that exist, and then to consult with stakeholders, and there's an array of them, clinicians, academicians, regulators, NGOs, and a host of them, to seek their views, to seek their input. And we have put together all this input. We have reviewed the existing laws that we have in Nigeria, the National Health Act, the National Policy on Health, and so on. So we've put all this together, and then we've come up with policy direction, which serves as a roadmap on how we want to get from where we are now to where we want to be, using the WHO framework. We have also said, so how do we achieve this? We need a strategy to achieve this. And the document we are presenting today provides that strategy.
He noted that both nurses and doctors are responsible for the transformation of healthcare quality in Nigeria.
Everywhere in this country, as you assess care, every strata of that care is provided in such a manner that we are using utmost care, you are safe, and you do not assess health, and then come up with complications or issues or harm, as we put it, from assessing that health care.
The Nigerian National Patient Safety and Quality of Care Policy document provides a guidance on the effective implementation and institutionalization of the Patient Safety and Quality of Care program in health facilities to improve safety in health service delivery. The policy sets out government's plan to ensure quality in healthcare and to continuously improve the care that is being provided by healthcare workers. In Abuja, Victoria Agbi, reporting for KAFTAN TV News.
Welcome back. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We are reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Now we'll go straight to a conversation for today. Like I said, we're commemorating World Patient Safety Day 2023, and we have got some guests. It's a full house today. My first guest is Ebenezer Egwuatu, who is a legal practitioner, medical lawyer. It's great to have you on the show again.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. And my next guest is Damilola Alabi, also a lawyer. It's great to have you on the show again, ma'am.
The pleasure is mine. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so now we'll talk to some other persons, but now let's kickstart this conversation. Let's start with you, Ebenezer Egwuatu. We know that it's World Patient Safety Day. We've been talking World Patient Safety Day. But before we kick right onto the theme for this year and then why we keep observing this particular day, first, who is a patient?
Okay, a patient is anybody who is receiving medical care. It can be either as an inpatient hospitalized within the hospital or an outpatient coming from his or her home to the hospital, receive care and go back.
Okay.
That's basically who a patient is.
All right, so it's either you're in the hospital or you're coming in to receive medical care.
Yes.
That makes you a patient.
Exactly.
So if probably you have a doctor, a nurse who is coming to treat you at home, does that still make you a patient?
You still are a patient.
So all the rights...
as long as you are receiving medical care, it could be for diagnosis, it could be for treatment. You are a patient. If you are being attended to by a healthcare professional, at any point in time, you are a patient.
So all of the rights that is supposed to be given to a patient, either you are in-house or they're coming to treat you or it is home service, you are entitled to it, yeah?
Exactly, you are.
Okay. All right, let's come to you, Damilola Alabi. If you would tell us, like, what are the rights of a patient? Because I recall that we've made this mention of this, that you have the patient safety bill or something.
Yes,
there's some people will tell you that, does that even exist, especially in Nigeria?
Oh, of course it does.
Okay.
So the Federal Competition Protection Commission, usually was formerly CPC, that was the Consumer Protection Commission, came up with this Bill of Rights. It's just an aggregation of the existing rights of patients, either in the Constitution, the different laws we have, putting them together. I'm saying that, okay, we are aggregating these rights so that patients know these are your rights, these are your duties, these are your responsibilities. For instance, the rights to information about your health condition.
Okay.
For instance, the right to be treated in a sanitized, dignifying environment.
Oh, that's also a right.
Yeah, that's a right.
Okay.
You have the right to consent. In fact, not just consent. Take it a step further, informed consent. That is information before consenting.
Okay.
So you have a right to that. In fact, you even have a right to refusal of treatment as an adult.
Okay.
And you also have a right to, you have access to emergency medical care.
Okay.
Now, this does not free of the right to pay, because we know hospitals are not charity. Also, it takes money to run them. So these rights, pick them from all the existing legislations, the existing piece of legal framework, and then aggregate them together to say, as a patient, you are entitled to these rights every time you have to access medical care, whether as an inpatient, like Barrister Ebenezer said, or as an outpatient.
Ah, okay, no. So you've actually said quite a number of things that we can actually sit down here and keep unbundling.
Yeah.
So now a patient has rights, and then you said they have rights to information, yeah?
Yes.
So, and consent, yeah? So it means that you don't just come and give me injection without telling me, excuse me, what is this drug? I should be able to ask you questions, and without any frown or complaints like some nurses will do.
It should be taught to you in the language you understand. For instance, if I'm not an English speaker, and you are about to administer any form of treatment procedure, I should understand, okay, this is what the diagnosis is. This is what we're about to do to you. I'm an adult. So I should understand you're about to do this to me, and these are the things that can happen or may happen, and all of those information. If I don't understand English, the bill provides that you should even get an interpreter in the language I understand. Okay. Because then it will not be consent if I don't understand what you're saying. So that's very pivotal. In fact, these are the very fundamental and very foundation of the rights of, even as humans, is because if you touch me without me consenting to it, that's assault. Oh, even in the hospital? Yes. Like, you don't have, the exceptional, of course there are exceptions to that, but the general rule is that you don't touch an adult of sane mind. Okay. In the bid, because you're trying to perform any procedure on them without they first consenting to that. Okay, so that part where some doctors will ask you, okay, do you mind if I open? Yeah. So that you understand, okay, he's about to touch me, he's about to do this to me, you have all of that information. Okay, so Barrister Ebenezer here has also talk about emergency. Kindly put us through, because is it like when you go to, probably there's an accident, and then they tell you that you have to go get police reports. We cannot touch until you get police report. Because I recall one evening I had a neighbor who was stabbed at night, and then we went almost all the whole hospitals in Abuja. I'm not going to mention name, and they kept rejecting her because of, no, we have to get police report on that, until only one accepted her. So are you saying that they actually trampled on her rights? Exactly. Beyond the Patient's Bill of Rights, one of the disadvantages or demerits of the Patient's Bill of Rights is that it is more like a policy document. It is not enforceable in courts. However, that does not detract from the rights of patients to enforce. Now, that brings us to the provision of the National Health Act. Section 20 of the National Health Act provides that no hospital in Nigeria, in fact, should deny patients treatment in emergency situation for any reason. That's the express provision of Section 20, and this one you can go to court and enforce it, because it says in subsection 2 that any hospital or healthcare professional who goes contrary to that provision will be fined the sum of 100,000 naira. But it does not stop there. The doctor or the nurse who is found liable of contravening the provision could go to jail for a time not exceeding 6 months. So imagine that a doctor is imprisoned, and you ask, what did he do? He said he denied this man treatment in emergency situation. Now, what are emergency situations? You know, a woman that is in labor, a pregnant woman that is in labor is emergency. Anything that is threatening the person's life, that if something urgent is not done, something is not done immediately by way of medical intervention, the person could die. A snake bite is emergency. Okay. You just mentioned someone was stabbed. That person is losing blood. That is extreme emergency. Cardiac arrest, heart attack is emergency. So there are a lot of things that could, accident is an emergency. So there are a lot of things that could fall under that. Now, the law says if a patient is brought in under this condition, that patient, the hospital protocol should be waived. Now, what are the hospital protocols? Go to Hall A and buy card. Okay. Go to this place and make payment. You could be in doing that in institutional protocol, 2 hours have passed. You have not seen a doctor. So the framers of this legislature, piece of legislation now said, in emergency situations, waive this hospital protocol. Now, that does not mean that the patient will not pay. You do not have a right to free treatment. However, you have a right to treatment in emergency situation. Now, what we usually suggest to hospitals is have a desk
let your emergency situation be like a one-stop shop.
Okay.
Have a desk strictly for emergency. In that emergency ward, have a small desk, put one staff there who could have card.
And this is for all hospitals, public or private?
Is it the effect?
Emergency?
Yes.
Talking about.
It says every hospital in Nigeria, whether public or private. Okay. That's the National Health Act, Section 20. Now, Section 1 of the Compulsory Treatment and Care for Gunshot Victims Act 2017, Section 1, almost repeated the same thing. It says every hospital in Nigeria, whether private or public, should receive and treat adequately. Receive and treat adequately persons with gunshots. Okay. So that brings us to the issue of police reports that you mentioned. We have cases where people are attacked by armed robbers, attacked by bandits, attacked by criminals, and the person goes to hospital, and the hospital requires the person to bring police reports. Now, does it even make logical sense? A man comes in with gun wound, the person is bleeding, the person is losing blood, and you say, before we treat you, go and get us police reports. Then, now, since 2017, this law has been in existence. However, there is a challenge. That challenge is that people are not aware. A good number of healthcare professionals are not aware. A good number of police officers are not aware. A good number of the ordinary citizens on the street are not aware. So we always seize every opportunity to amplify this, that it is no longer a requirement. The law says hospitals should receive and treat adequately with or without police reports persons with gun wound. So if you come with police report, fine and good. If you didn't come with police report, it is not a condition precedent to your being treated. It is not. So hospitals should desist. It's an appeal now. Hospitals should desist from insisting that the person must go and bring police reports before they treat. Police officers should also desist from harassing hospitals, because that's the challenge they have. That, okay, if we do not do this now, the police will still come and harass us. So we are also saying, where you as a hospital did the right thing and the police harasses you, you could amplify it, or you could escalate it by saying, well, this is the provision of the law. Now, that whole provision does not say hospitals should not report to police. We must balance it. Okay. The law is that where a person with gun wound comes in for treatment, the hospital should receive and commence treatment. However, within 2 hours of treating the patient, the hospital should report to the police, nearest police station, to say we have a person with gun wound here that we are treating. Now, the hospital is not, the law didn't say do not report. The law's intention is to save life first. However, for that second requirement, we have been able to look at the law, and we feel that there is need for, how would I put it, to amend some of the sections of that law. We have found out some lacuna, some gap. It's not enough to make law. That law should be practicable, given our Nigerian circumstance. What is the distance between hospital A and the nearest police station? When the police says, when the law says report to police within 2 hours, does it mean the doctor or the healthcare provider should physically go to the police and write a statement? Does it mean, does a phone call to a police station suffice? Does a text message to a police station suffice? Does a WhatsApp message suffice? Can we say we have reported to police if we did this within 2 hours? That's one. Two, let's assume it is 2 a.m. This person has a gunshot and there are pellets, particles of the bullets, close range to his vital organs, or even the hospital is battling to save his life, and 2, 3, 4 hours, they are not done. Should they leave the patient to go to police station to ensure that they meet with the legal requirement of 2 hours bracket? So there is need for us to review that law and put in measures, because the law says report to police. We do not have a definition what constitutes reporting to police. We do not have a definition of the mode of reporting to police. Okay, do we have a directory of all the police stations and phone numbers that we should call? Am I supposed to call the DPO to say, if I'm reporting to the police, who exactly am I reporting to?
So you're reporting to the IG?
Beautiful.
Or to the DPO?
Beautiful. So there will be need also to include in that legislation the provision that each police station should have a desk for this purpose. Even if they don't have it, they should have a number that anybody can call at any time and somebody will pick. I know they run shifts. Some people can be on morning duty, some people can be, but on that particular desk, somebody should have that phone. Even if it is a mobile phone, somebody should have it per time. If that phone rings, you should attend to it. But that number should be designated for this purpose.
Okay.
So that somebody doesn't call that line and now come and report a criminal activity happening elsewhere. If the officer in charge goes to address that criminal activity,
someone else is there.
Do you understand? So there is need for us to rejig our law to make it practicable. On paper, the law is sweet. It's beautiful legislation. But then, when we begin to practice it, is it practicable? Will it solve the problem the drafters of that legislation set out to solve?
Okay,
or do we further complicate issues?
So I think I have like 1 million questions in just one that you've already said from this one. Now, I'm going to throw that question back to you, Dr. Barrister Egwuatu. Is that law, is it practicable in Nigeria? One. Good. And then you said it is a legislation. Was that what you called it?
Yes, it's an act of the National Assembly. It's a law. Yes,
so
it's enforceable.
It's enforceable, yeah?
Exactly.
So it means that at that point, I can sue that doctor who refused to treat my neighbor.
You can.
Okay, so answer my question.
Okay, is the law practicable in
Nigeria?
Yes, it is. Now, one thing is practicability. Two is it solving the problem it's intended to solve? Now, why is the law practicable? The law does not enforce itself. This is a law that has been in existence since 2017. Now, a lot of people, I mentioned people not being aware of these rights, and that's part of why we are doing what we are doing, so that people can know. That is one. So you test the practicability of the law in courts. So if someone goes to court to say, I had this concern or I had this issue, I went to hospital A, they denied me treatment.
Yes.
I went to hospital B, like the case you cited, the person eventually got treated in a hospital. The hospital admitted him. Now that individual can invoke the provisions of this law to say, when I had an emergency situation, I went to this hospital, the hospital denied me treatment. This is the provision of the law. So courts enforce my rights.
Okay, so that hospital that rejected us,
that is one. Do you understand? Two is that your second question, please refresh my memory.
Okay, I said I first of all asked if it's practicable. And then secondly, since you said it's a piece of legislation, if we can actually sue that hospital.
Yes, it is enforceable.
Okay.
However, there's an advocacy I've been making. We have the Fundamental Human Rights Enforcement Procedure Act. Now, I am saying that we should also have a Patients' Rights Enforcement Procedure Act. Why do I say so? When we talk fundamental human rights, the court takes it very, 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 very seriously. In fact, it is so serious that when the court goes on vacation from middle of July, right, till this week, the courts have been on vacation. But when what it means is that if you bring a case for divorce, if you bring a case that someone is owing you, if you bring a case that any case you bring, the court may not hear that case at the moment, because to the reasoning of the court, it might not be emergency. But the court places premium price on human rights, such that if the court is proceeding on vacation, the court appoints what we call vacation judges. So if you file a fundamental human rights enforcement case, the vacation judge will come and sit to ensure that this man's human right is not abused, is not trampled upon, and where it has been trampled upon, that this man gets redress. So we are saying that patients' rights should be recognized as a different class of rights.
Okay.
That right to consent, that right to treatment in emergency situation, right to information, and all that should be recognized as a different class of rights and given, elevated to the status of fundamental rights, such that even though some patients' rights are derived from the Constitution, do you understand? Some of those rights, there is that intertwining. You can stretch it. You can actually stretch it to accommodate that. But then, if we have a patient's rights enforcement procedure, what it means is that if you bring a case of medical negligence, it will be treated as a patient's rights enforcement case, and it will be given an accelerated hearing. Contrary to what we have now, if we bring a case of medical negligence, by our jurisprudence now, it falls under the law of torts. Yes. So it will come as the regular civil action. You come, you take a date, you do you understand? But if we have patients' rights enforcement procedure, before we have that, we should first of all recognize patients' rights as a special class of rights.
Are you saying there are two different things, medical negligence and then patients' rights?
No. When I delved into medical negligence, it is broader.
Yes, because I knew we were going to talk about that later on, but because you said this,
now medical negligence is basically a mistake or an error that occurs from the part of a healthcare provider leading to harm. Now, while I brought it in respect of patients' rights, the hospital, if the hospital rejects a patient, the patient suffers harm. And that harm sometimes could be irreversible when death occurs. Do you understand? So if you bring a medical negligence case where death occurs, it's going to be treated as law of tort, except there is element of criminality, medical malpractice, like case of organ harvesting leading to death. That's where the police comes in and the criminal element is established where after their investigation, and the person will be tried under a criminal law jurisprudence. But the point I'm making is this, that there is need for our lawmakers to look at what I'm saying, that patients' rights should be recognized as a special class of rights. For now, we have the Patient's Bill of Rights. That document is, like she said, an aggregation of the rights we have. Okay, I said some time ago here that our patients' rights is not contained in a single document. The National Health Act provides for patients' rights. Chapter 4 of the 1999 Constitution, some of the sections there we can adopt as patients' rights. I just talked about the compulsory treatment and care for gun wound victims, the HIV/AIDS anti-discrimination law. There are pieces of legislation here and there that provides for patients' rights, including the COVID regulation. In fact, I think in 2020, the National Human Rights Commission came up with a minimum standard rights for persons receiving COVID treatment in isolation centers. Now, those things we are saying, bring this right together, collate them, put it in a single document, and name it whatever name we want to. If it is Patients' Rights Act, call it Patients' Rights Act. Then you now provide Patients' Rights Enforcement Procedure. We have the Child Rights Enforcement Procedure, which if something happens, this provides the rules on how you should enforce the rights of a child whose rights have been abused. We have the Fundamental Human Rights Enforcement Procedure, which sets out guidelines what the courts will do in the event someone's human rights have been abused. Now I am advocating that we should also have a Patients' Rights Enforcement Procedure so that victims of patients' rights can get accelerated hearing and quicker redress to their complaints. Okay, so I'll bring it, because we talked about medical negligence, I'll bring that question to you, Damilola, because he said he touched on it. I didn't want to come there yet, but then let's go there. Because I recall reading a particular story of a new an artist that just passed, and then at some point his parents came out to say that he was being treated by an auxiliary nurse who gave him
an injection. We've not confirmed the story, but I'm just saying these things happen.
Yeah.
So now let's use that as an example where an auxiliary nurse gives someone an injection, and then the person feels like, okay, that's how the person lost his life. Or someone comes out to say, I recall one of my in-laws coming to say that her mom was she was not feeling too well, and then at some point they took her to the hospital, and she left to go get something, and coming back, they told her mom is dead. And she said, how? I just left my mom doing very well. So what exactly happened between then and now? So since then till now, she's still asking the doctors that question. So at that point, if you have to deal with this, where do you start? And how do you begin to sue either the hospital or the doctor himself?
Okay, so the subject of medical negligence can be a quite tricky one. And the reason is this. In medical science, for instance, you're admitting somebody for, like the instance you cited, your in-law, and my condolences. Now, it may be hard to prove that one thing led to a death. And that's the tricky part.
Okay.
Okay, so there will be several instances we're not a community or a country that is so keen about the conduction of autopsy. And stuff and things like that. But let's say, for instance, for the sake of the argument, an autopsy was done. Usually, in most cases, it is not always one cause that led to the death. There may be associated causes. Okay. And it may be like, this is the real cause. And in most cases, that may be the hiding in quote place for most of these cases of medical negligence. Because again, we can be like, the person died, maybe life is frail. Let's admit that. You see one person now, the next second, the person is no longer here. So by the time they outline the causes, it might be hard to be able to pinpoint that exactly this. Which
even
is
an autopsy cannot?
Yeah. It lists a number of causes.
Okay.
There will be associated causes. For instance, an adverse reaction to a particular injection or something. Now, that can tie to the fact that maybe proper questions were not asked the patients, or even there are people who have allergies that they don't know.
Ah, okay.
So then, it might not be a case of, oh, this person did not know, because usually, I don't know if you've been to the hospital and they ask you, okay, are you allergic to this, to this? And for me, at times, I'm like, okay, these are my known allergies. I may have unknown allergies. Because, we also know people will be like, I want to subject myself to an allergy test. Test me for all the things I may be allergic to. Until something happens. I've had people who are allergic to something as simple as flagyl, paracetamol, and it can literally kill.
Yes.
So at that point, do you now say, okay, it was negligence? So it might be like the primary cause of death and then the associated causes. But then the subject of medical negligence, again, that does not take away from the fact that, first of all, as a person, I applaud our medical practitioners. I see them as literal magicians. They do so much with so little. But we can also not take away the fact that they are humans. Several things come into play. And, there's a saying that we're told in school that for an ethical practitioner, you might not need a law because it's going to do the right thing. But at times we have the law because we always have unethical people almost in any sphere of life. People will just, I will not say have a disregard for life, but just be like, you know what, let's just do this thing and get it over with. We have unscrupulous elements anyway. Okay. So proving it, first of all, we start from basic, like Barrister Ebenezer said, negligence itself. First under the jurisprudence of the law of tort. So you establish the duty of care, that, okay, this medical practitioner owes this patient a duty of care. Then next step, that duty was breached. And then the next step, the patient suffered harm as a result. You see, that third part is where the trickiness comes. Okay. Because you have to establish the nexus between the patient and the harm. That this person's action caused this person's harm. Okay. So you have to establish all of those elements, all those ingredients to prove that there was actually negligence. And so, and also when we're talking of negligence, there are cases of, it could be mistake, like you said. Now, you will not elevate a mistake to negligence. And then you have the criminal part, the civil part, some of these parts. But then, you also...
But did you just say that you will not elevate a mistake to negligence?
Okay.
Some people say, your mistake caused my person's death.
Yes. I'm saying that in the instance of, okay, maybe mistake is not the right word to use here. Okay, so I take that back. Maybe mistake is not the right word to use here. But what I'm saying is that, it could be a case, for instance, the case of the allergy I cited. The patient does not know he has an allergy to this. It was administered. Now, in the process of trying to, curtail, maybe administer something to reverse the action, God forbid, the patient passes. And then, so now, do we say that was negligence on the part of the doctor? I mean, maybe one leg trying to play the devil's advocate here. But then I understand the fact that medical negligence is rife, is happening almost everywhere. But then again, the instances proving it, that's where the matter. Because really, in law, we say the court is not a Father Christmas. If you're saying this doctor killed this person, you have to still come to court to prove it. So now that proving
that's why you say he who alleges has to prove.
Prove. So if you're alleging that death resulted as a result of the action of medical health personnel, so and so, then you have to connect the action to the resulting damage. So that proof is where it can really get tricky, because it can be like, okay, it could be an associated cause, but that was not the primary cause. Probably the person had underlying issues. But then again, that does not take away from the fact that we will keep educating people that when you smell a fish, when it smells fishy, that might be a reason to probably dig a bit further. But then I understand the concern that we have, that people are like, okay, we leave it to God. If we fight from now to tomorrow, it will not bring back the dead. You know, we have this, it's part of our, more like, we just accept it. But then it's also not helping the jurisprudence of medical law practice, because if everybody keeps accepting it, how do we find cases to try in court to really, you know, enrich our jurisprudence, test the laws? But you can't also force people to go to court. Because again, it's very sensitive, especially where death happens. It's very sensitive. You want to honor the memory of whoever is dead and preserve all of that. And also because of how sensitive it can be in the minds of people. You want to be very careful around that. But then as much as possible, we encourage people that as much as possible, if you smell something was not right, it's okay. You have your proof. It's okay that you come to court and the court said, okay, after we had everything, we found out that, okay, it was not medical negligence, but at least you tested it.
Okay. Now, so still on that, because I need our viewers to understand the fact, because I've heard some people say this doctor just did one kind abracadabra, he just did trial and error, and then someone's relative just lost their life, and then someone will come out to say that, oh, please, you cannot fight the government and ever win. One man cannot fight the government and win. So can someone, as a probably just a family or just me, it is me against the government, can you ever win such case?
Of course you can. I mean, it depends on if you're talking about medical negligence in this case. For instance, if it's a government hospital, you're actually not fighting the government. Every hospital, there's the hospital board, there's a national hospital board. Every hospital probably has a board, there's a CMD or whoever. So it's like an organogram. It's not particularly, because the health sector is just one sector of the government. So if for instance, you want to sue, you will not go and sue the president. You don't go all the way to the top. You understand?
But I'm suing the hospital, and the hospital is a government-owned hospital.
Yeah, it's the government-owned hospital. They have boards, they have the CMD who has been appointed by the government to manage that hospital.
So does it mean I'm suing the CMD or the hospital?
Suing the hospital itself, then you can join the CMD. And for instance, if the person was in a particular department, you may join the end of department. If you know the doctor that probably was in charge or something, you may want to join that doctor too. More like, okay, everybody, you know, in law we have the people called necessary parties, interested parties, everybody that should be, that you want, so that when the court gives an order, everybody that you want to be affected by whatever the court says, you can join them together. But it's not like you're going all the way to the, and yes, you can win. If you can prove your case, like I told you, everything depends on proof.
Okay, so our time is fast spent, and even our next guest is already on ground. But then before we let this go, we have been talking about World Patient Safety Day all along. I recall having Barrister Egwuatu come here to talk about Patient Safety Day. So all this talks about Patient Safety Day, and then they said this year's theme is engaging patients for patient safety.
Yes.
Now, all along, we have been raising the awareness, we've been engaging policymakers, empowering patients, and then advocating for urgent action. What makes 2023 World Patient Safety Day different from every other one?
Okay, I mean, for one thing, it is the fact that we are not stopping. That makes it different. We are not keeping quiet. We are not getting tired. And the reason is because we can't get tired. People need to know. Emphasis, the English people will say emphasis. When you keep repetition is for emphasis. We do it this year, we do it that year. I mean, for instance, somebody might not know even what happened last year. This year, they know, oh, so this thing actually exists. Okay, okay. Next year, we do the same thing. We keep drumming it and emphasizing that you're a patient. It doesn't literally just make you helpless, like a baby, and you're like telling the medical practitioner, do with me as you please. You have certain rights that at least you should, because life is just one thing can happen, and that's the end of it. So issues of health are very pivotal, and people should really take it serious. So what makes this year special is the fact that, first of all, we're not getting tired. We're coming back. We are engaging patients. We are like interacting with them directly to say this, more like holding their hand and saying, these are your rights. So that they can be concerned. I mean, I understand the fact that we live in a society where, not too much premium is given to the fact that I want to stay alive and all of that. But at the same time, we want you to know that you have rights as a patient. And you should be able to gradually begin to learn to use your voice for the sake of your own safety.
What a fine way to end this segment of the show. It's like we could just go on and on. It's just inexhaustible. Thank you so much for your time with us.
Thank you.
Damilola Alabi and Barrister Ebenezer Egwuatu would bring up our next guest who has a complaint with regards to maybe medical negligence. Maybe you'll find out after this time out. Join us again.
And deep within me, I'm like, oh, and it was someone else's fault. You know how you have that rage in you? There's that hate. Why did I even go to that hospital in the first place? And then what ifs? The ifs will keep playing in your head. What if?
I can imagine.
So the first part of 3 years of caring for that child, it was more or less finding answers. So I wasn't even looking at suing at that point in time. I wasn't in the right frame of mind.
Yeah.
If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We're reaching you from KAFTAN's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you actually just joined us, you've missed out on a whole lot, but then you can still join the second part of the show as we have been joined by Fatima Zarau Ahmed, who is a mom catering to children with special needs. And we also still have Barrister Damilola Alabi. It's great to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Great. All right, now let's talk about, we've gotten a brief of your story, but
Yes.
I'd like Nigerians to hear your part of the story, how it all started. You talked about medical negligence, and before you came, we've been talking about how to deal with medical negligence. So let's hear your story, then we'll bring in the lawyer to help us. Where do we come in to solve this quagmire?
Okay, my name is Fatima Zarau Ahmed. I'm a mom to 2 special needs children. One has cerebral palsy, which was caused due to medical negligence, and the other one has Down syndrome, which is more or less like a genetic issue, so that there's nothing you can do about it. But for my son, who is 7 now, what happened was I was in labor, and then suddenly my doctor that I was seeing at the time came in, and he asked me if I was feeling any pain. Obviously, when you're in labor, you're in pain. And so he said, oh, don't worry, I'm going to give you something for the pain. And the last thing I remember was him opening up the cannula on my hand, and he picked out, and already there's a medication in the syringe that has been there in the syringe, so I don't know what it was, but he brought it out from his pocket.
You don't know what it was?
No.
Okay.
He brought it out from his pocket, and he just injected, and I fell asleep. So it was much later when my elder sister inquired, and he was telling her he gave me Penta to put me to sleep, so he would actually, put off the pain that I was feeling. But there was no consent, because I didn't know what he was giving me. He only asked if I was going through pain, and I said, yes, I acknowledge, yes, there's the pain, because I'm in labor. And he decided to put me to sleep. And when I gave birth to the child came out asphyxiated. That means the child came out, wasn't breathing, there was no crying, there was no activity. It was more or less what they call medically, the child came out flat.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that's what they call it, flat, like when a child comes out almost lifeless. So the child came out lifeless, and at that time the injection was wearing off, so I could see what was happening. I could visibly see that the child was not breathing, there was no activity, and I was asking a lot of questions and nobody was answering. It was just him, an intern doctor, and 2 nurses with me, and I could see that he was panicking. Because they were doing a lot of CPR, there was suction, because the child had ingested a lot of amniotic fluid, so they were suctioning, CPR, pumping the manual oxygen, but still the child was not breathing. And then there's no pediatrician, actually. Okay. So I remember he had to make a phone call. He made a phone call to a pediatrician he works with, but unfortunately it was during Salah, that period, so she was not even in town. This happened in Kano, in a private hospital in Kano. So she wasn't in town because she has gone back home for her holiday. So he called her over the phone, and he told her what was happening, so she guided him through over the phone. Yes.
Okay.
So I think it took, I can't remember how long, but I know it took a quite amount of time for the child to come through. And almost immediately when the child started breathing, you could see that the child was struggling. The child was really struggling. They kept on doing the CPR, by the way, the CPR, pumping the oxygen and everything. And then he was able to cry, but it was quite weak and very low. It was very low. So the child started crying, and then he was still on phone with the doctor, by the way. She was still communicating with him back and forth. I know they drew out samples. It was later on we found out that they wanted to check his glucose level and the calcium, which were very low at that point. And she told him what to do, you know, to support the child with the glucose and the calcium and everything. And then immediately after the child was able to cry out, it wasn't too loud, but like it was moderate, he started convulsing almost immediately. Yeah, there was convulsion. So the child kept on convulsing, and he was telling the doctor, oh, I could see some jerking movement, because even me when because they left me, you know, I was still there lying down, you know, so I could, because the bed was beside me, so I could turn and I could see what was happening. The child's hand was like shaking, you know, vigorously with the legs, and then he would go stiff.
Oh wow!
You know, so it was like
for a baby.
It was like a continuous thing, shaking, you know, going stiff, shaking, and then the eyes were going up and down. It was a lot, actually. It was a lot, and then the nurses were trying to block, so I cannot see them. I kept on raising my head to see exactly, because I wanted to know what was happening, and nobody was answering my questions. Nobody was talking to me, but I could see that they were panicking. They were really, really panicked. So, you know, a lot of things, they sedated the child, he fell asleep, but then a few minutes later, he woke up, and then the jerking continued. So, that was what happened. You know, they tried as much as possible to calm the baby became calm, he slept off, but then the baby, I noticed, was sweating a lot.
Oh wow.
Yes, the baby was sweating, and I was asking, is it normal for a baby to sweat? But then nobody was answering, because I had a lot of questions. I've never seen a baby sweat that much in my entire life, because at the point they had to take off the overall he was wearing, including the diaper, because he was sweating all over.
Oh, wow.
It was quite unusual. So to cut the long story short, because it's quite a long story, we were taken back after they were able to, you know, calm the situation, and the baby was a little bit stable. We went back to the room after they dressed me up and finished all the things they needed to do for me. We were back to the room. We spent the night. The baby was in a lot of distress. At a point I gave up, because I remember I woke up in the middle of the night. I saw my elder sister. She was holding him, she was crying, she was panicking. She was like, I don't know if this baby is going to make it. We tried calling the doctor, actually, including the nurse that was on duty, but his phones were switched off. And the nurse told us that she didn't know what to do. At a point, the nurse dragged her chair to the room. She slept with us in the room, because she too, she didn't know what to do. Because you can clearly see that the child is struggling to cling to life, but then we can't even reach the doctor.
Wow.
So at the point I was like, please, me, I'm tired, I want to sleep. Whatever is going to happen, like anything that's going to happen is the will of God, so you can't change it. So I slept off, because actually I was tired. So that was how we spent the night. In short, the pediatrician didn't come to see my son until the third day.
Oh.
Yeah, so they were just managing the child by sedating the child. Every day the child was being sedated. Just to keep him calm. So there wasn't any even breastfeeding at that point in time, because he was on fluid. There was no breastfeeding, there was no activity. It was just the child being sedated all through for 3 days, until the pediatrician came back from her holiday. She saw the child, and I don't know, they went out, they discussed some things. They didn't tell me, I didn't know. We spent 7 days. We didn't know exactly what was going on. They didn't tell us anything. The only thing they told us on the 7th day when we were being discharged was, your child might need further medical help. Might. That's just what they told us. So we didn't know what was going on. Not until when I came back to Abuja after 3 months, and then those convulsions came back.
Wow.
We now realized that, oh, maybe we're dealing with something bigger than what we know. And then there was a time we woke up in the morning, and he had part of his skull sank in. Yeah. So that was when I knew there's something bigger than we know. And I started looking for answers. I met a Yoruba woman that told me to go and meet Agbe. I don't know, that's what they call them. Those local herbalists that give, local. I went to Monday market. I saw the woman. Whenever they see the head, everybody will, this child will not make it, And at 3 months, the child was looking like a 1-week-old baby. He was so tiny. And then, the head is very, very small. He has a very condition they call microcephaly. Yes. So he has a very small head. At that point in time, I didn't even know that he didn't have the soft spot. All I know is that there was a bone that was coming out from the forehead through to the back and across. They call it premature suturing of the cranials. So it was quite a lot, to even understand. Yeah. So at that point in time, we tried.
That's the first child?
Second, actually.
Okay, second.
That's my second child. So at a point in time, I stopped with the herbalist because it wasn't really working. Whatever that she gave me was not working. So we now started going to a particular hospital here in Abuja, and that was when we got the full diagnosis that, this is what this child has. And then it's something that is irreversible. It's like a brain damage. It's irreversible. It's incurable. There's no treatment. They'll tell you all the horrible things. And there's a way, I don't know, some of these medical doctors, there's a way they push the bad news to you that sometimes you feel there's no humanity, there's no empathy. They just tell you all the terrible things about this particular condition. And they tell you there's no hope. Nobody says if there's life, there's hope. And you will definitely look for that hope wherever it is. It's quite a lot. And I remember when the doctor was telling me, a female doctor actually, a mother, she was like, your child has this. It's a brain damage. And brain damage doesn't have any cure. There are a lot of things you're going to expect later on in life. He might be blind. He might turn out to be deaf. He's going to be immobile in a terrible way. So it was quite a lot for me at that point to even, I didn't cry because I didn't even understand what she was saying. I couldn't process the information. It was actually the nurse that was with me that was busy crying on my behalf because I didn't even understand. It was later on when it hit me, I was like, so this is the reality. This is what I'm going to live with for the rest of my life. So in a nutshell, that's the background of what happened to my
It's quite son. Deep.
Yeah.
Now for 7 years, yeah?
Yeah, he's 7 now.
For these 7 years, what has happened? Have you sued? And that, I'm going to ask you 1 million questions, and I'd like you to answer them in one breath.
No problem.
Did you sue? Or did you just leave it to God? It has happened and it has happened. And then secondly, what has been happening since then? Are you able, because before we brought you in, we're talking to the barristers, and they say you must be able to prove that this medical negligence caused this. So are you able to prove that it was as a result of that medical negligence, that's why your child has that condition?
Okay, so first things first, suing, no, I haven't sued. Why? Because when you're thrown into something that comes unexpectedly, there's a lot of mental health challenge.
I can imagine.
I was depressed for a very long time. I was lost in the journey because, and I think I remember when the doctor told me everything she needed to tell me about what cerebral palsy is all about, I remember asking her one question: is there a support community that I could maybe see parents like me that we can, some parents have gone through the journey and they're doing well for themselves. They have gone past that stage. So I needed to know, because I've lived abroad and I've had a miscarriage abroad. And I know the first thing when they told me that the baby had no heartbeat, they sent me to a support community of parents that have miscarried. So I was trying to play that scenario to see if it works down here. I know there's support, in America you can have a support group for new fathers
for almost everything.
Everything. So why don't we have support communities and she was no.
And at some point this is Nigeria.
She was like, no, I don't think we have, maybe in Lagos, but here in Abuja I don't think we have any support community. And then they give you this diagnosis and they leave you to go and find everything out yourself. Go through it and understand the journey. So at first, I was lost. I was working before with a Turkish organization. I had to resign because there's no how I could juggle my job with a child that I didn't even understand what the condition was all about. So there was a lot of confusion at first. There was a lot of crying and denial because I was in denial. Like, how can I carry a pregnancy full term, you know? Yeah, I do have ups and downs during my pregnancy, but it's normal with me. That's the kind of person I would, all the morning sickness, whatever kind of sickness you can think of, it comes with my pregnancy. But then you have planned, but this thing just came unexpectedly. And deep within me, I'm like, oh, and it was someone else's fault. You know how you have that rage in you? There's that hate. Why did I even go to that hospital in the first place? And then what ifs? The ifs will keep playing in your head. What if?
I can imagine.
So the first part of 3 years of caring for that child, it was more or less finding answers. So I wasn't even looking at suing at that point in time. I wasn't in the right frame of mind. We'll be sitting here gisting. I don't know what I'm saying to you, because whatever I'm saying doesn't even make any sense. A lot of people noticed, oh, I think you're depressed. And I'll be like, no, I'm not depressed. I'm okay. I'm okay. So there was a lot of emotional roller coaster at that point. So suing was not even, I tried actually when my son was 3.5 or so. I started speaking to some few lawyers, you know, they wanted to contact human rights and everything, but then family will come in and tell you, leave it to God.
That's like we could actually go on, but our time is fast spent. So let's bring in Barrister Damilola here. We have less than 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay.
What can you say to all this that you've heard?
First of all, I want to start by saying I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything you went through. I mean, I am sitting here and I can never, it would be very insincere of me to say I can imagine what you went through, because like, imagination cannot even capture it.
Never.
It cannot.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, and I'm so happy that you have hung in there for these 7 years for yourself, for him.
Yeah.
So it's a boy?
Yeah, it's a boy.
Oh, okay. For him, and I'm so sorry you had to go through that.
Thank you.
And I'm really, I mean, it's touching. I am deeply,
like I have goosebumps.
I'm deeply touched. I'm deeply touched. And first of all, I want to start by saying that this is an appeal to our medical practitioners, that please, there's a lot to be done in the area of communication. I'm somebody who likes closure. I'm a system person.
Yeah.
Like, give me this information and this information. I want to know. I don't like to be caught unawares. I don't like to be left in the dark. I don't think anybody, especially when the baby is vulnerable, is literally depending on you for everything. So you want to have all of the answers. You are the mother, you birthed this child. And then it's almost as if you're screaming and nobody's even seeing you. Like, talk to me, what's going on, what's happening? And, you know, it's a public appeal. That there is a lot to be done by medical practitioners. I understand that, you know, like you said, the doctor was panicking, and maybe in his mind too, his brain has actually even frozen, like he's in a free state. His own concern is just, I don't want this baby to die in my hand. And but that does not exculpate him from the fact that, first of all, from the beginning, are you in pain? You know, like we were talking earlier, one of the rights in the Patient Bill of Rights is the right to information about your health, relevant information. To be told that, okay, you're in pain, and this is what I'm about to administer to you, and this is what it will do to you. It will help you sleep, relieve the pain, so that we can then process what's going on from there. You didn't have that information, and it was not an emergency. So, you know, in emergency situations is where giving all that information might be, you know, kind of, you have to abridge everything because the concern is let's save life. But from your story, you were not an emergency.
No.
So you had a right to know that, okay, this is what you're about to give to me. It will make me sleep, and then we can proceed with this. Because you're an adult. You are able-bodied, your sane mind, you should have that. So, and you know, like I was saying earlier, consent is at the bedrock of everything. Everything.
All right. Since our time is fast spent, so like they've breached a lot of from the article from that
the Patient Bill of Rights.
Patient Bill of Rights, consent, information, and all. So at this point, what will happen? That's where I'll leave it for you. What will happen? And then secondly, Fatima, would you like to proceed to legal action, or you've, like your family said, let's leave it to God?
Well, actually, I made a video recently that went viral. I don't know if you've seen the video. I spoke about medical negligence and how we as the patients have enabled the recklessness in the system, because all the time we keep saying, oh, leave it to God, Abadwa Allah in house, like we keep saying, but leave it to God, at the expense of who? The financial expenses is not from here. And when we talk about suing, sometimes people, like when I made the video, there was a lot of misconception about the video. People felt I came out now after 7 years because I'm in need of money. No amount of money this doctor will pay me will ever make my child neurotypical. Yes. No amount of money.
Or can even make up for how much cost you have.
And then the emotional damage that I went through. I've had depression, I've had low blood pressure, all because of the situation. There is no amount of money you will pay a parent that will ever pay for what you have done for that person. Right. Sometimes we would like to sue. Why? Because we need to put a stop to whatever that doctor is doing. He's still doing it.
He's still in practice.
He's still in practice.
He's still using his license.
He's still doing the penta injection to a lot of mothers. He is still doing it. We have been doing a lot of background checks. I have had the chance to speak with some of his victims, because we call ourselves victims of, we are his victims actually. We have parents that the children didn't even come out alive. Yeah, they came out dead on arrival. So it's quite a lot.
All right, so let's get your last thing.
First of all, I want to say that there's no timing to when you decide to come out about something. It's your story, so you own it. It was your lived experience.
Yeah.
So nobody should put a time frame to say, oh, you had this time to speak.
Yes.
And I also want to salute the courage. You know, like we were saying earlier, that if people don't speak up, we don't enrich the jurisprudence. We don't test these cases in court. We don't test these laws in court. So we're leaving everything to God. How do we prevent it from keep recurring? So, you know, like you said, I mean, interestingly, you have your story, you have your facts, you have your evidences. You can either decide to go to court or even decide to petition the Nigerian Medical Association. There's a disciplinary committee. So that's
the MDCN.
Yes, MDCN. So you can literally write the petition, the doctor will be invited. I mean, and you can actually do both side by side. Because again, I want to say this to you: you deserve justice. You deserve closure.
I agree.
Thank you very much.
Wow, it's been a wonderful, in fact, roller coaster of emotions running. Thank you so much, Fatima Zarau. It's been a wonderful time having this talk with you.
Thank you
for sharing your story.
Thank you too.
And thank you so much, Damilola Alabi. It's been a wonderful time having this conversation with you.
Thank you.
All right, viewers. Like I said, it's been a roller coaster of emotions. I'm literally burning with anger, with so much. But then, it is what it is. Just stay safe, whatever you do, and make sure that you ask questions. If you have to sue, please sue. I agree. Thank you so much for listening. It's been a wonderful time here on The Conversation. First of all, we had a chat with Barrister Egwuatu Ebenezer, who is a medical lawyer. We also had a chat with Damilola Alabi, who is also a lawyer. And now we finalized with Fatima Zarau Ahmed, who is a mom catering to children with special needs. And it's been a wonderful time here on The Conversation. I'm sure you must have been rightly educated, entertained, and informed, and that's the most important thing. I will see you next time. Happy World Patient Safety Day. Like I said again, stay safe. My name is Annabel Orji. God bless you and yours, and God bless Nigeria.